Long before you could watch new movies at home close to release, blockbusters like the Fast and Furious franchise, the James Bond films, and even films like Mr. and Mrs. Smith were bringing in large audiences and making good money by just promising chaotic and bombastic action, and oftentimes not with the greatest script, especially in cases like the Fast and Furious franchise. It even still works today. That franchise is still going. At the time, video games were improving at a rapid pace as well, and you had consoles like the PS2 and GameCube coming out offering graphics that were better than ever before, and because of this, developers wanted to cash in on this type of popcorn movie success and create sort of popcorn video games. So you had the start of once great franchises like Need for Speed, you had the start of the 3D Grand Theft Auto games, and you had lots and lots of movie tie-in games because what better way to cash in on the success of a movie than just make the video game version of that movie? Now, at the time as well, most parents were not gamers. This is the 90s and early 2000s, so they weren't making very informed purchases on what is the best game to get my child who is into video games. And what that resulted in is whatever looks cool, whatever brings in that kind of popcorn entertainment tended to do well. I mean, it worked on me as a kid as well. I can't even say anything. I bought the Aragon video game for PS2 even after seeing the terrible movie. I read the book, and I still thought that would be a good purchase. Granted, I was around 8 years old, but that's the kind of logic we were working with here. So back in the late 90s, Midway went looking through the bin of franchises they owned, looking for something with all the sweet, sweet explosions and action of a Michael Bay movie, for something that they could sell to kids and young adults, and in that bin, they found Spy Hunter. Let me show you what that original arcade game looked like. I'm not very good at arcade games, but you get the idea. A game clearly inspired by James Bond, it was even meant to be a James Bond game originally, and it comes with its own musical theme. There's a cool spy car, and it shoots guns. Pretty basic premise for a game, but one that works even today, especially back then. Just look at games like Twisted Metal or movies like Death Race. Fast cars and stuff blowing up just works. Instead of popcorn flicks, I suppose we can call these Mountain Dew games. The musical theme I mentioned before is called the Peter Gunn theme, which was used for the show Peter Gunn in the late 50s. And since Midway couldn't get the James Bond license, they decided to use that song instead. It was created by the composer Henry Mancini and even won the Grammy for Album of the Year in its full album release in 1959. Now, Midway just needed to put it all together, so they called up Paradigm Entertainment, who made Pilot Wings 64 and a few racing games for the Nintendo 64, and put them to work. The new game was going to be called Spy Hunter Returns, and was intended to release on the Nintendo 64 as well, like everything else Paradigm had been doing. At some point during development, they shifted to the PS2, and moved the release date up from the late 90s to 2001. And in September, the new game, now just called Spy Hunter, was released. With a modified version of the Peter Gunn theme and some fancy modern graphics, the new game was born. As a kid, I have no idea how I ended up with this game and whether it was my parents buying it for me or me picking it up, but I saw a cool car and explosions on the box and my 8 to 10-year-old brain lit up like it was Halloween. Now, the way the game actually works is simple, but obviously very different from the arcade original. There are 14 levels to select, and each level has at least one primary objective and a list of secondary objectives. You must complete the primary objective and get to the end to complete the level, but the secondary objectives are optional. However, to increase the game length and replayability, each mission requires a certain number of objectives to be completed to unlock it, so you want to try and complete as many of the secondary objectives in each level as you can. The start of the game is a training course for our character Alec Sex behind the wheel of the new G6155 Interceptor, the same name as the vehicle from the original arcade game, as he prepares to stop the evil Nostra organization, who are attempting to launch 4 giant EMPs called the Four Horsemen to stop all electricity in the world, at which point he will take over the world. Somehow. Maybe if people can no longer microwave Hot Pockets, there'll be no weapon strong enough to stop him. Who knows?
When the Four Horsemen ride, darkness will blanket the earth, and a new king will rise from the ashes.
You're somehow supposed to get all of that from this opening cutscene, but I have no idea how. As any good millennial will tell you, there was nothing more fun than being in the back of the car on the ride home with your mom after buying a new game and reading the manual to find out all about the characters and story that you were about to experience. In the actual gameplay, you have a chase cam style of camera that racing games use as you drive the Interceptor through the course and are introduced to the machine guns, trackers, oil slick, and turbo that the car is equipped with. It's also got an AI voiced by a British woman to really nail home the spy aesthetic, and even has a license plate because this secret agency follows the law. Oh, and what's that? Oh yeah, the Interceptor can turn into a fucking boat and back because spy cars are awesome. Cue the slow-mo. And that's not all. If you hit half health in a level, it also becomes the most ridiculously shaped motorcycle the world has ever seen. But there's no actual model for Alec, so he keeps the roof. You're then introduced to the weapons van, which can allow you to restore your health and ammo in the middle of a level, just like you could drive into it in the arcade game, and also repairs you to car mode if you had been transformed into a motorcycle. As you go, you unlock more weapons for the Interceptor because the IES, the organization you work for, is constantly developing new ones. In the mission select screen, you also get a write-up that tells you what's going on with the story and the objectives for that mission, which you'll have to remember as you make your way through, or you can check in the pause screen of any level. Each level also has a time limit since this is one part spy action game and one part racing game. You get your first easy mission and move on. I should also note that the end of each level has a super short CG cutscene to show you getting away. Now that you've unlocked some options, you can also change your loadout to anything unlocked by that mission before entering a level, as well as check the enemies that you'll find in that level, like this mortar thing. Look, the IES stands for International Espionage Section. They never claim to be good at naming things. We then get a few boat levels and get the guided missiles, which you control the lock-on of by clicking the left stick, and that still irks me, even though it makes sense, because you don't have to take your thumb off of the steering. The only thing triangle does, though, is toggle the near-useless all-blue rear view cam, so I really think they could have made a switch there. Once we get to Mission 5, things start to get a little interesting, as Nostra has stolen an Interceptor somehow and we're tasked with taking it down. Fighting against a version of yourself is always interesting in games, and this is no exception, even if it's mostly running away from you and using smoke and oil slicks instead of actively engaging you. He's even nice enough to wait for you if you get too far behind. What a pal. The IES learned nothing from this, though, because in the very next mission, you have to destroy 3 stolen Interceptor prototypes. Good job, guys! After this, we get a new, upgraded Interceptor. This time it's black with green tinted windows, and the IES is nothing if not consistent, because it goes from the G6155 Interceptor to the G6155 Interceptor 2. Apparently, that number is not allowed to change. After some more training with the upgraded car that can now scan targets and see hidden lasers with an ugly green bubble on the screen and shoot EMPs, I mean, if Nostra can do it, we can do it too. We get one mission with it that ends with us driving onto a train, before we're suddenly stuck with a civilian car and tasked with escaping a warehouse at the start of the mission. You only get 50 seconds to escape a difficult section, and even if you get out, if you don't drive through the gates before the timer ends, Alec will pay them back for the stolen Interceptor waiting for him, and stop dead while they close the gates on you. You get into the weapons van and somehow come out as the Interceptor, because that makes perfect sense. And then after stopping some missile launches and driving onto an active car race with some of the best voice acting of all time, you get a pretty challenging level, drive onto a plane on the runway, destroy a hidden missile, and get introduced to the stealth power-up, and are off to the final mission, which requires most of the secondary objectives to be completed to unlock. The music for this mission is a remixed version of the Peter Gunn theme, with a more metal style.
Complete.
You set off to disable the 4 Horsemen EMPs. Remember them? The plot we were introduced to at the beginning of the game and then didn't touch until now? Perfect. To do this, you drive around the most Hot Wheels missile bay ever invented and disable the shields so you can shoot the giant EMP missiles with your tiny shootable EMPs. The whole thing is brilliant. Disable EMPs with EMPs, of course. There's also a special failure cutscene when you die that shows the missiles going off. But once you finally stop them and get the final cutscene, we cut to credits where another remix of the Peter Gunn theme plays, this time with lyrics performed by the band Saliva of Click Click Boom fame. The early 2000s were a different time. As a side note, the game also includes cheats that are for fun stuff unlocked by completing levels within a certain time limit, but just completing the game unlocks a hovercar version of the Interceptor that you can play any level in, and it's very floaty. There's also a two-player mode that has different objectives depending on the mission that you select to play, where each player gets their own Interceptor and competes in some ridiculous challenge, like killing the most chickens. And that's the game. Overall, a very successful new franchise for Midway that scored well, averaging an 84 out of 100 on Metacritic for the PS2 version, and bringing a lot of fun to me personally as a kid, and even now when I was replaying it for this video. Originally, all I was going to do was a nostalgia trip on this game, but there are two other Spy Hunter games that were released on the PS2 that I never played as a child. Midway decided to capitalize on the success of this arcade reboot with its own sequel just 2 years later, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so if you're Midway and you just had a successful reboot of an old franchise by a small team with good experience, what do you do next? If your answer was hire a completely new development team for the sequel that's going to come out only 2 years later, then congratulations, you think like corporate America. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. Anyway, this time they went with Angel Studios, which you may not know that name, but I guarantee you've heard of this company by their current name, Rockstar San Diego. Yeah, that's right. Before they were making games like Red Dead Redemption, or assisting on LA Noire GTA 5, the very last game they made for anyone other than Rockstar was Spy Hunter 2. So, leaning on their experience with the Midnight Club racing games, what did they come up with? First off, they ditched the way the secondary objectives work and simplified all of them to the point where I'm not even sure if it's actually possible to miss them anymore, and changed the levels to more of a pass-or-fail system, and if you complete a mission, the next one is unlocked. They did bring a new version of the Peter Gunn theme back, and at this point I feel like it's more accurate to call it the Spy Hunter theme. We're also introduced to a sexy new lady that we're going to work with named Agent Duvel.
Here's your new toy, Alec. The other kids will be so jealous, at least the ones you don't blow away first. It's got more firepower than you can shake a third world dictatorship at. That may sound stylish, but if you ask me, this car really needs a lady's touch.
The story is still shown in text before each mission, and you select your upgrades from any you've unlocked so far before confirming. The Interceptor has been redesigned and is now named the G8155 Interceptor. So I guess it turns out the number can actually be changed, but considering it went from the 6155 to 8155, it seems to use the same logic as what they used to name Fast and Furious movies. We start out with an obstacle course again with the redesigned Interceptor, and I just have to note a few things about its design real quick. So, we have removed the license plate. Maybe that'll help keep them from having so many stolen. All Nostra had to do was check the government records for the garaging address before. Anyway, second, we have longer side windows, but there is no rear window. We have a rear view camera that is once again blue, but this time always on at the bottom of the screen. But how the hell are you supposed to back up this thing without hitting anything? Moving on to the weapons, we now have a recharging system on our primary weapon and limited uses on our defensive weapon. Secondary weapons introduced later also work on a limited use system. So no more swapping between different weapons to deal with various things in the level. It's now either shoot in front of you or behind you, and that's it. The weapons van also got a redesign that allows it to drop us off on the go, which is kind of cool. The Interceptor still becomes a motorcycle at half health, but now the health is represented by a red bar that fills up when you take damage, and when it fills up once, you become a motorcycle, and the second time is death, which is way more confusing than the previous system, and I have no idea why they changed it. The Interceptor is now equipped with an off-road mode as well, which is now controlled by triangle, and allows you to get better traction in rough terrain, while also giving you a nice yellow backpack for some reason. But here, we see that despite the weapons van still existing, you can pick up health packs and also weapon packs to restore health and ammo in the middle of a mission, which is a sign of things to come with this game. The car can still transform into a boat as well, and while the car version looks like a neat speedboat, I think it's still a downgrade from the previous design, and the motorcycle boat thing that we have here is truly ugly, just like the water here. I have no idea why it looks so bad when the previous games looked just fine. I mean, look at this. The way the aim works is also wonky now. Honestly, I can understand why they chose Angel Studios if they were going to change developers with their previous experience, but I don't have any idea why this is what they ended up coming up with. Coming out of the training, though, we can see in the level select that it says Russia M2, and that's because this game, instead of jumping around the various locations, chooses to complete each location in a series of missions one at a time, which is fine, but I think it limits the creativity between each mission compared to the first. This game plays almost like they were told to go closer to the roots of the franchise and make it more arcade-like, but I honestly don't understand why they would make that decision after the first one's success, especially since this game came out only 2 years later, so there definitely wasn't much dev time there. In this level, we also get the first turret section of this game after driving into the weapons van, because obviously that is more fun than driving around in your spy car. It's relatively easy, so it's not that offensive, but I don't think a game like this really needed that. After making a rendezvous with Agent Duvel, who's on a red motorcycle and talks to us in her sultry voice.
It's a trap, and those guys are blocking our exit. Let's show them the error of their ways, Alex.
The level is complete. Next, we have an escort mission that ends in us escorting a plane down a runway, which is another good use of this game's mechanics changes. Meet up with Agent Duvel one more time, and then come face first into another of Spy Hunter 2's brilliant changes, the boss fights. It makes absolutely no sense after what they did with the first game to have this kind of gameplay, and it isn't really fun or interesting either. They supply you with loads of health and ammo packs, and you mostly drive in a straight line, shooting at whatever turns red, until the game stops you and says, you did it. You're supposed to be stopping big crime bosses with each of these, but if you didn't read the text before each mission, you wouldn't even know that's what was going on. After 8 whole minutes of me doing this and resetting once because I thought it was glitched because of how specific it is with where you shoot it, I was finally able to move on. Next, we're hitting the road in the good old USA, and I need you to look at this description of Noah Thurgood, the informant we're supposed to be protecting in this mission. He's a southern U.S. conservative who is linked with environmental and animal rights groups and well-connected in the intelligence community? Are they sure about all that? Then, on top of that, in Russia, our crime boss was the Cossack. Simple and makes sense. But here in the US, we have Mad Mojo Carter? Is he going to be busy fighting the Powerpuff Girls after this? Moving on, Thurgood is killed by someone in a stolen interceptor, so while we're chasing him down, hopefully the IES is thinking real hard about how the removal of the license plate strategy didn't work, and maybe the password to the interceptor garage shouldn't be Spies Are Cool 420. After chasing him for a while, you're called away because the IES boat, which is apparently a thing, is under attack, and they decide to let the rogue interceptor go. We go into boat form and destroy some boats, then chase Mojo Jojo or whatever his name is through the bayou to get to the second boss fight, which is also an escaping plane, but this time it's on land and he has some cronies protecting him. Now is a good time to talk about how the health you have in this game is nothing compared to the first one, and in going with the more arcade-like style, you have to avoid taking damage at all costs. But when you're chasing a boss down that will escape if you don't destroy the engines fast enough, it becomes a miserable experience of restarting over and over, hoping to do enough damage to the engines before you get blown up yourself. It's truly miserable and speaks to the short dev time that they had on this game. The third area is Asia, just as a whole, I guess. You start by protecting the IES ship in boat mode, fighting some enemies, then dipping into a safe house, and eventually get the first mission that meaningfully uses the off-road mode, which is proof that even the developers weren't that interested in it because it's barely used throughout the campaign. You blow up a statue head for reasons and reach the second turret section of the game, this time in a helicopter. I still don't understand this mechanic being here. You're told the bad guy is escaping by train, so the next boss fight, which is the only one that's actually decent, is chasing down the train and destroying it one car at a time. This one's actually pretty difficult, not least of which because the laser weapons they unlock here are absolutely worthless for this boss fight, but switching back to the rockets is what got me through it. Now we're going to go off-roading some more and get the mandatory single CG cutscene in the middle of the game, riding around with Agent Duvel and seeing the motorcycle's snow ski form for the first time, because now we're in the Swiss Alps and there's going to be snow to deal with. The stolen interceptor shows up here again, in case you'd forgotten about it, and this time we actually get to take him down. That's for guessing our password. The third turret section happens afterwards, and we drive away in a weapons van. Then we have another actually unique and well thought out level. We have to storm a castle and help out Agent Duvel, and there are gates the enemies are nicely closing one at a time as we near them, so you have to actually drive as fast as possible while fighting the numerous enemies defending the castle to make sure we get through in time. Through the castle is a mountainside escape in the snow, so we have to switch to motorcycle mode because only the snow ski can handle snow, and only the motorcycle can become a snow ski, and we fight down the mountain on only one health bar, followed by the final turret section protecting Agent Duvel as she escapes. We are then finally on our way to the Antarctic, where we learn that Thurgood, who is the mastermind, and still alive by the way, is planning to, that's right, melt the polar ice caps, flooding the entire world, while he and his pals ride away on his mobile fortress called the Ark, which will survive the flooding and repopulate the Earth from there. When turning off everyone's electricity didn't work, the next conclusion was obvious. Go full Old Testament. This goes essentially the same as every other boss fight in the game, except after destroying all the parts on it to stop it, you use the claw they had on it to get yourself inside and blow up its internals too. We then get the final cutscene and drive away with Agent Duvel as we are apparently now needed back in the US.
Nice work, Alec. Those are some fireworks.
As for other modes in this game, we have two multiplayer modes this time, a cooperative campaign where player 2 controls your secondary weapons as you go, and a head-to-head mode called Spy Hunt. Not very interesting, but they probably felt they needed to include it after the first one had something similar. Spy Hunter 2 averaged a 57 out of 100 on Metacritic and would have been largely forgettable if there wasn't a special message on the back of the instruction manual. Oh yeah, that's right. While they were working on the second game, Midway was busy getting a deal together to turn Spy Hunter into a movie franchise. They had Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on board, set to star as his first breakout role as an action hero. He had already made a cameo in the Mummy franchise as the Scorpion King, in their own spin-off movie as the Scorpion King again, and in the action comedy The Rundown before this, but he was looking to take his career away from wrestling and more into Hollywood, starting with this film. So, the film was set to release in 2005, 2 years after the release of Spy Hunter 2. The film was going to be created by Universal Pictures, who brought in Michael Brandt and Derek Haas from Too Fast, Too Furious to write the script, so they obviously knew what they were going for based on that choice. That eventually fell through, and they changed to Mark Swift and Damian Shannon in 2004, who previously worked on Freddy vs. Jason and hired John Woo to direct. That might have had potential, but problems continued to plague the movie, and Zach Penn, who wrote X-Men 2 and Elektra, was hired to rewrite, before changing it to Stuart Beattie, who wrote the enormously successful Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and John Woo dropped out, so they hired Paul W.S. Anderson from the Resident Evil movie franchise to direct. By October 2005, the Spy Hunter film was still in limbo, and The Rock was now starring in a different video game movie in Doom, and eventually talks of the movie ended, and it never happened. Fergus Jeffs wrote a great article that I've linked in the description detailing everything that happened to the movie during development before it was dropped over on the Film Stories website, and I highly recommend anyone interested to go and check it out. But while that was all going on, this was still the early 2000s, and like I mentioned before, movie tie-in games were still a huge thing. So yes, while all of this rewriting and changing of directors was going on, Spy Hunter Nowhere to Run was in active development. This time, Midway contracted Terminal Reality to make the game, who had worked on Blood Rain 1 and 2, and the Aeon Flux movie tie-in game, which is honestly more perfect casting than they could possibly have predicted, but at least that movie actually came out. Nowhere to Run came out in 2006, and the developers stated that they had tried to accommodate the constant script rewrites while working on the game, but eventually had to give up and just get it out because Midway was starting to struggle and needed to bring in some revenue. Surprisingly, despite all of that, the game was praised for its story. Keep that in mind. So what does all that end up looking like? Oh boy. They started with a relatively interesting concept, at least. Remember when you start a level escaping a warehouse in a civilian car in the first game? Or when you see Agent Duvel showing off the Interceptor in the second game? It's clear Alec Sex, the character, is a spy himself, and not just a getaway driver of some sort. He was doing some kind of spy work off-screen in all of these games. So what if we made a game structured more like a movie, where you play as the actual agent themselves, and are not always confined to being in the car? Since they already had The Rock on, and this was a movie tie-in game, you know what that means. Alec has been renamed to Alex Decker, but he is modeled after and fully voice acted by The Rock himself. This game uses a much more standard campaign-style presentation. There is no level select outside of going to it in the main menu, so you start the game and are instantly dropped into the new Interceptor, which no longer has any numbers in its name because this is the soft reboot now. The new design is very toy car, even more so than any of the previous designs, but at least it has a damn rear window again. The Rock's voice acting actually isn't too bad, especially for a celebrity actor/wrestler taking on a voice acting role, and early in his acting career at that. But as far as gameplay though, the controls are absolutely insane. Probably a product of having to create vehicle controls and human controls, but it is absolutely impossible to handle this car accurately. The second you tap a direction, it goes flying off that way, much farther than you would ever expect, like it's on ice. It's so bad, I went into the settings here looking for a way to turn it down, only to find out that was not an option. We do now have tire spikes on our car though, so that's nice at least. The game likes to suddenly jump from gameplay to cutscene like modern big-budget games do, but it is not nearly as smooth here on the PS2 as it is today. In the first cutscene after gameplay, we meet Karen, who introduces herself to the player as the creator of the Interceptor, and we learn that the tech is required to drive it. The Rock makes fun of her for not knowing how to fire a gun. Sexism in movies was alive and well in 2006.
Karen, do you even know how to fire a gun?
Tries to open a briefcase like an absolute caveman. And Karen shoots some explosives to prove how shitty he was being earlier and save him. A mysterious man takes the briefcase, and then we skip forward in time by 1 year. The enemies talk about how they have upgraded the Interceptor, and the Rock pops up out of hiding in the most ridiculous disguise they could have possibly given him. He looks like he's ready to ride a motorcycle cross-country while drunk the entire way. At this point, we're given control as the Rock for the first time, and are told to sabotage the ship. What this game doesn't really tell you is that secondary objectives are back, and that is one of them. However, there's no reason at all to do them, other than to improve your rank at the end of a mission. We hit an alarm and then get introduced to the hand-to-hand combat. It works on light and heavy attack system with combo finishers. You can pick enemies up over your head and throw them. You can do a stun attack followed up by a finishing move. That's a clear reference to The Rock's wrestling career. The Rock puts on his spy riz for his contact on the enemy ship Dante.
Can I help you? If your name is Dante, you can.
And if it's not?
Then I'll have to kill you.
Who tells him how to advance and that he needs to go to the research lab to take out the scientists that helped Nostra upgrade the Interceptor while they had it stolen. You beat up some dudes making your way through the ship until you meet up with Dante again and do what I think is the only QTE section in the entire game. There are a few tidbits like this that show signs of a game that went through development hell, just like, or rather in part because of, the movie it was supposed to be based on. Dante then tells you to get some stuff from the weapons locker, and you pick up a handgun. Next, you head into the research bay where you find Karen, who is the scientist that had been working with Nostra. Alex refuses to kill her, and they work together to steal back the Interceptor and escape, and she tells him that she was never actually working for Nostra. After traversing some lasers, I took out the handgun for the first time, and immediately had to go into the controls because the Y-axis is inverted by default when using a gun, and that setting is for plain games and serial killers only. At this point, we see the game's cover system, which is so bad I quickly learned to just walk around without cover whenever using a gun. Alex clears the cargo hold where the Interceptor is held and escapes with it and Karen in boat form, which we still have, but now it's one of those boats on skis instead of a speedboat. Alex lies and says he had killed the scientist, and you begin the boat section. This controls exactly as terribly as the car does, and we get a weapons crate, which serves the role of the weapons van and boat from before. Nostra closes a gate on us, and we have to dock and get off on foot to find a way to open it. In this section, I realized just how lenient the aiming is with the gun, before opening the gate and running back to the interceptor with Karen presumably patiently waiting inside. We drive the boat off and get back to land where I died for the first time, and discovered that the way Nowhere to Run handles this is by resetting you at the latest checkpoint with more and more health than the last time, initially starting you with whatever you had at the time you got the checkpoint, which is actually a pretty good system for a game that doesn't have consistent ways to restore health and is not actually trying to be that hard. I also activated salvo mode for the first time here, and it basically stops time, and you have to move the cursor onto the targets while it actively fights you and tries to move anywhere but where you're moving it. If you actually successfully target them, it will fire off missiles and destroy them, but it's really not that much better than using the auto-targeting missiles you already have anyway. Eventually, we come to an old ship in the way that we need to get through, so Alex sets off on foot again to set some bombs to blow it up. And here is where we can see one of the problems a lot of old games used to have. Doing anything contextually is probably difficult. I don't make games, but I can guess. But these days, you would either be in a combat state or not, and if not in combat, the buttons would switch to whatever they need to do out of combat, so you can do more things with less buttons. But not here. Oh no. Here, the melee combat buttons are always active, and the grab enemy button is also the interact button on X, so what you end up with is big, imposing Alex looking for a hug from his imaginary friend every time you're next to something you need to interact with, but not exactly where they want you to stand. The ongoing escape continues forever, and eventually we hit a railroad where we learn that the Interceptor does in fact still turn into a motorcycle. However, we now have The Rock as the face of the game, so now it's a regular motorcycle, and the transformation makes even less sense. This thing is borderline impossible to control accurately, like they clearly want you to, and ends up looking like Alex is either drunk and living the life his disguised alter ego was always meant to, or just has absolutely no idea how to ride a motorcycle but thought it would be really cool. Also, since Karen isn't on the motorcycle, I guess she got off at some point, but I have no idea when that would have happened. Eventually, we get away with this super cool action movie cutscene into a Halo Pelican and escape Nostra. The rest of the parts of the Interceptor be damned, I guess. We don't need them. The loading screens of this game tell you the name of the chapter as well, and this loads straight after the escape into a chapter called Surprise Attack. So, not so much of a surprise anymore, but okay. We've arrived back at IAS headquarters, and Karen is with us again, so maybe she was the motorcycle the whole time. Who knows? IAS members take her away, and you follow someone to the conference room to learn about how the bad guy Gomez is creating an army of weapons and scientists, and Alex gets yelled at for disregarding orders.
Traffic was a bitch.
You said you took care of the scientist.
No, I said the mission was a success.
But she's still alive. How the hell is that a success?
Got her phone number.
Then the not-so-surprising surprise attack begins. We fight through our own base, and at one point we're introduced to the armored enemies, which, as far as I can tell, do not take damage from bullets and can only be killed with explosives. This would be fine, except they do not stop chasing you, and when you throw a grenade, they are all on a timer, so half the time they end up just walking right past your only form of defense. We also get a mini boss fight against a spider tank, which is similar, but this time there are loads of explosives around to help you out, and it goes down pretty easily. Alex reaches the unstable reactor that Nostra are attacking and promises the scientists he won't let anyone touch them, but then after the fight, they say it's too late for them and die in the reactor anyway.
We've stabilized the core.
Then let's go. I'll get you topside.
It's too late for us. Radiation seeped through.
They did stabilize it, but what was the point in killing off these scientists? It doesn't even make you feel angry with Nostra because it wasn't built up as a potential, and these scientists don't even have names. It's just so out of place here. It may have been a movie scene that they were trying to tie in, but was never realized. I don't know. Alex gets back to the top of the base, and Wallace orders him to kill Karen and ignore the Interceptor, to which he says this.
An order? Well, I guess we know what that means.
He's probably supposed to be a cool agent that plays by his own rules, but he really just comes off as someone that shouldn't have a job. He couldn't open a briefcase and lost the Interceptor once, then brought the enemy straight to his base and ignored orders once again to go chase down the now twice stolen Interceptor. That's some crazy job security he has. Moving forward in counterattack, we are now at the Nostra base to get the Interceptor back. It's obviously on foot since we don't have our car, but there is a nice section where Alex gets to pilot his own spider tank. It controls fairly well, but fighting other tanks is hilariously easy as they go down in 3 hits and attack you so slowly that you don't even have to move once you get them in your sights. Eventually, we arrive at a scene where 2 women attack Alex with their fists and he prepares to fight back, only to then be confronted with the fact that this is a boss fight and you absolutely need to use guns to defeat Zora by shooting the explosives under wherever she's standing. They really had my interest for a second, thinking I was going to enter a boss fight with my fists, and presenting it that way was very strange for what it ended up being. This could have been another result of the constant changes being made to work with the ever-changing script, but once again there's no way to know for sure. Zora runs away after the fight, and we continue going after the stolen car. Once we finally reach the Interceptor, we get a cutscene of Karen with Gomez, the mysterious man who stole the briefcase at the start, and she says she will get Alex if no one else does. So she is very much with Gomez at this point, and then he proceeds to make another joke about how she definitely can't be trusted with a gun.
I don't know, Marek. I've seen the damage this one can do. Do you think we can trust her with a gun?
Zora seems to have his trust, so I guess it's not even a sexism thing. Karen is just wearing a name tag that says, "Hi, I'm Karen, and I have no idea what a gun is." We are now on the run and take the Interceptor until we reach a bridge that we have to lower on foot, then run back to the Interceptor. Good thing you can't drive it without the tech, otherwise it would have been stolen there for sure. In a scene straight out of Fast and Furious, Alex drives the Interceptor through a window of one building into another, and we're back on foot to get the conveniently placed elevator with the car on it moving. This is a short section like the bridge earlier, and at this point I thought they were starting to get a better idea of how this game should have been structured. Getting out on foot and fighting as a spy while also controlling the cool spy car is a great idea, but this game so far has turned out to be more of a run around as the Rock and occasionally drive the cool car game. There is a close-up soon after as we're continuing through with the Interceptor on its in-car controls, and I'm actually surprised by how similar it is to modern cars. It's got a few extra buttons in there, but to be fair, my Honda Accord doesn't have rocket launchers and Super Boost, so I'd imagine those might take a few extra buttons. This scene ends and we drive for a little bit longer and are treated with Fast and Furious level riding once again. Obviously, the Interceptor would have no problem with this, and that helicopter might as well have been paper. Now begins the cleaning up level, and this opening cutscene is right out of a Phase 4 Marvel movie, thinking it works as the stupid-ass decision line from Nick Fury in Avengers.
Wallace's orders. We've got to wait.
It's okay. Wallace and I have an understanding. He gives orders, and I break them. Is there another way in?
I have no idea where we are or why this is even happening at this point, but I guess they have Wallace and we're here to help. Fighting through the large houses is actually a nice change from the grimy places we've been through before though, and this fancy house even has the Spy Hunter arcade game in it. How cute. Interacting with it unlocks it from the main menu, and you can play a version of the arcade game from there. We finally locate Wallace, and another Karen can't shoot joke.
Well, look at that. It's your old friend.
Ex-friend. Care to let me prove it?
Say anything.
I don't like your chances from up here.
And Wallace tells us it's a trap, and we start a boss fight with a turret. And how do you fight a turret? Obviously, you run around the room and hit 4 buttons so you can shoot it one time and repeat until it's defeated. We're then sent after Olaf, which is one of the bad guys, and continue on foot until we see a red speedboat trying to escape, and start the next level, the chase, suddenly in the Interceptor in boat mode chasing him down. The chase is pretty unnoteworthy, except for how it takes control away from you for a cutscene, not once or twice, but 4 times, when the other 2 games never needed to do that for their set-piece moments, and it was ever more cool because of it. When the 4th cutscene ends, however, this puts us in the next level, Intercepted. We're now chasing a Nostra train, which I guess Olaf is on, and I have no idea how we know this once again. Did I mention this game was praised for its story? Anyway, this apparently requires going into motorcycle mode, where you chase after the train, and eventually have to get off on foot to get back onto the tracks. This has you clearing out enemies and advancing the motorcycle forward yourself without a cutscene, which is truly miraculous at this point. It culminates in a construction site that shows you multiple objects in the environment you can throw enemies into, and they all come at you with their fists, clearly setting up an all-hand-to-hand section. However, they don't actually take your guns away, and I just did this entire section by shooting all the nearly defenseless enemies as I ran through the top where a heavy guard awaits. A couple of well-placed grenades later, and we're back on the motorcycle, which we now have to fight the train with. The laser weapons it has are completely useless, but I realized really quickly that the machine gun takes out the train's health very fast and managed to destroy the train. Alex jumps onto the train and the derailed level starts. We are fighting our way through the train going after Olaf here, and when we reach him, he declares himself unarmed, so Alex decides to fight him hand to hand, for real this time. First, we have to clear out his henchmen, then we head to his train car where he cowers and cannot be damaged by fists normally, so you have to pick him up and throw him into things in the environment, interspersed with more henchmen to clear out. This ends with Alex throwing Olaf out of the train, and the final countdown level begins. The interceptor is destroyed in the explosion, and we go after Karen on foot. There are a few spider tanks in the way that we pick up the conveniently placed rocket launchers for, and continue through the sewers. At this point I realized that triggering cutscenes was caused mostly by reaching a specific spot, and learned that most of the heavy soldiers in the level can be bypassed by simply walking past them. Nostra doesn't pay them enough to keep up in that armor, I guess. We destroy a helicopter with a turret, and keep moving until the NPC that was helping Alex through the level decided to stand directly in front of the passage I needed to use. So I did the only sensible thing that I knew Alex himself would do, and punched that idiot out of the way so I could move on. We get another spider tank section and then get loaded up for a boss. One of the bad guys tells us they observed Alex to create the ultimate soldiers, and then you have to destroy their tower to advance while being assaulted by minions. There's no cooldown between when you can hit the tower though, so if you just ignore them and hit it, you will finish the boss fight in seconds. After a short jaunt, we find Gomez and Karen, who sick Marduk on us, and we defeat him by shooting the boxes above his head like a Crash Bandicoot boss. Once he's defeated, Alex jumps onto the plane the other two were attempting to escape in and confronts Karen.
So this is it. You finally get your chance to settle the score.
Yeah, been waiting over a year.
Obviously, she was on our side the whole time. She knew Alex would easily defeat all of the obstacles put in front of him and then make it to the plane so that they could have this confrontation together. Karen also misses a point-blank shot on Gomez here, so I guess everyone was actually right after all. The plane is falling apart, so you have to make your way to the cargo hold. Once there, Karen brings Alex to another interceptor, and they drive it out of the plane using its new flight mode, because of course it can do that now. And that is where the game ends. Gomez gets away, Karen is back on our side, and the movie and any sequels never happened, so who knows what was supposed to happen after this. This game had serious issues, and I have no idea how the story was praised at its high point. The game averaged a 51 out of 100 on Metacritic, and the series essentially died until there was an attempted revival by new owners Warner Brothers on handheld consoles in 2012. In total, it took me about 4.5 hours to complete, and this is the big one. For a game in a franchise about driving a sick spy car, of those 4.5 hours, just 42 minutes and 51 seconds were spent in the Interceptor, with the other almost 4 hours spent entirely in cutscenes, loading, or as Alex / The Rock. It's utterly insane to me how they thought that was the correct mix of car versus on-foot time, but they were also trying to accommodate the script that never existed, so I can't fully blame Terminal Reality for this one. The movie likely would have ended up in a similar situation, more about The Rock than it was about the cool car that the series was based on to begin with. The Spy Hunter franchise, as owned by Midway and released on the PS2, represents such a waste of potential. The hard work by Paradigm Entertainment in rebooting the franchise was thrown away in favor of a shitty movie franchise that never even saw the silver screen. It could have been so much more, given more time and effort, and leaving it in the hands of the people that made it a resurging success in the first place. The reason I made this video is because I went on YouTube a while ago looking for something similar about this game that I loved as a kid, and I couldn't find it, so I decided to make it myself. If you like this, please consider leaving a like, commenting with some feedback, or even subscribing if you feel like it. I plan on making something like this about once every month or so, and I hope to see you there. I look forward to it.